he then smacks her in the head with his sword butt, and he does say sword butt, technical term, not just me making a silly phrase, sword butt. What's good? Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I am the titular Newest Olympian. I never read the Percy Jackson books growing up, and I'm doing so now as a 29-year-old man. And I'm making my way through the series, but I'm not doing it alone. I am joined again by an expert in mythology and also Percy Jackson. And being a cool person, it is Exolore's own Dr. Moiya McTier. Dr. Moiya, how is it going?
Hello! It's going really great. I loved the last chapter, but this one I think is even more exciting.
This one is really, really solid, and I'm very excited to talk about it with you. It has been minutes since we last spoke about Percy Jackson. All we've done in between is refill our water glasses and become one with the plumbing, but now we are here to continue to discuss it. So I think we get right into chapter 8. We capture a flag. Much more of a direct chapter title, but a very exciting one because Capture the Flag has been hinted, and I love Capture the Flag. So the fact that they're doing it very much excites me. Did you play a lot of Capture the Flag growing up? Because I played a ton.
I wouldn't say I played a ton, but I played, like 500 pounds of Capture the Flag.
It's very good. I was mid-sip of water and I almost did a literal spit take, which would have been bad because I am in the studio and I would have ruined equipment. That's very good.
I'll wait until you swallow to be funny next time.
No. It's all good. Spit take would be wonderful. I'll just have to direct it at something else. But yeah, I'm a big Capture the Flag fan. I play a lot. I also played Variations. Where I grew up in New Jersey, we would play Manhunt, which is like Capture the Flag without flags, basically. It's such a fun game. It feels like a perfectly campy game too. Even though I've never been to a sleepaway camp, it feels exactly like a game that would be at a sleepaway camp. So
100%.
It feels absolutely perfect for this setting.
I think that a lot of Capture the Flag happens in like open fields maybe, but Capture the Flag in the woods is where it's at.
Yeah. In the woods, very intense.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done that. I've only done suburban neighborhood Capture the Flag, where you just utilize front yards and backyards. Sometimes it would just be one person's yard. Other times, if we had a lot of people, it would be the entire street. Ooh. And that's really cool. And there was one time in particular where I took it pretty seriously. Whenever I play anything, I'm overly competitive. But there was one time when I was dating a girl. We had not had our first kiss yet, and I was of a young enough age where I was heavily invested in having this, and she was on the other team, and she said that if we told her where our flag was, that she would kiss me. I went to my team. I was like, guys, can we take one for me? And can we please tell them where the flag is? They were like, yeah, dude. Everyone was very supportive.
Wow.
And then it was a lie. It was a lie. She didn't do it, which honestly, fine. I didn't want to pressure her into some moment, but she tricked me darn good because I fell for that one.
Wow.
I do think that her friends put her up to it. I don't think she suggested it and then said, screw you. So I don't hold it against her. Mm-hmm. But under normal circumstances, I would get very intense and Capture the Flag. It's super fun. Works very well in where I grew up in New Jersey, in that Texas is very big on fences in between yards, and New Jersey is just open between them because the yards are a little bit bigger, houses are a little bit smaller. So we would just have big multi-house yard combined games, and it was very, very fun. Nice. So big Capture the Flag fan. Now, back to the story. Percy starts to settle into a bit of a routine. In the morning, he does ancient Greek with Annabeth, and in the afternoon, he has outdoor activities. So he learns by process of elimination that bow and arrow is not for him, foot racing, not for him, and neither is wrestling. So we've gotten not Apollo. Is he a bow and arrow guy?
I would say Artemis for bow and arrow.
That makes more sense. Not Artemis, probably. Not Hermes, probably. Not Ares, I guess, for wrestling?
Yeah.
Okay. His only prowess was in canoeing.
So many hints.
That's on top of water. Just reading this chapter, you just get more and more inclinations that his dad is Poseidon, which I was so happy about. Mm-hmm. His only prowess was in canoeing, which Percy identifies as not necessarily the skill people expected from the conqueror of the Minotaur, which is just a great way to put it. Everyone having these high expectations, and then he says, I'm good at canoeing, guys.
Can't we just canoe to the danger?
I have here in my notes, archery is Apollo, but maybe I'm just wrong. The overarching note here is that Apollo is one of the characters that wasn't in Hades, the video game, which is like where my mythology knowledge starts and ends. So I know absolutely nothing about Apollo because he wasn't in the game.
Okay.
Then Percy goes on to describe how all of the older campers and counselors just can't figure out who Percy's dad is. And this I felt to be just a little unbelievable because you look at all the stuff that's happened. Yes, they weren't at the Met, but he knows that a fountain was somehow involved. You've got the water bathroom thing, which feels very obvious. And he's good at canoeing. It feels like, what's the common thread? Water. I felt like it was a little unbelievable that people are racking their brains trying to figure out what it is. It felt kind of obvious to me. I don't know if everyone's actually being coy, but this was a moment where I just thought, okay, really? Come on, it's kind of clear.
Maybe this is just the fact that you're a grown man reading this and you have the critical thinking skills of a grown man.
100%. I try not to take too much pride in solving puzzles from any sort of YA novel because they are targeted towards people who are less than half of my age. So I'm not going to do a victory lap here, but yeah, it just felt a little obvious. Maybe I need a 12-year-old correspondent to see if they would have any guesses. Who would you have guessed it was?
Right.
Do you notice a common thread in between all the things Percy's good at?
Like, there's not a god of plumbing. There's not a god of toilets. Like, what did they really think it was?
Until now! Really, that should have given it away.
Mm-hmm.
Because what else would it be besides water? Steel? Copper? Whatever the pipes are made of? I don't know what pipes are made of. But I also, I get that this is building suspense. It just felt like it could have been done at maybe not write it where no one knows what's up. Maybe just keep it to where Percy doesn't know what's happening, or people are mumbling about it and not telling him.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping him out of the loop would have been more believable than him saying, no one knows what's going on. But anyway, Percy starts to understand why Luke is upset with his dad. The lack of contact is just frustrating, especially because they are these all-powerful beings. You think they could just take a couple minutes out of their day to swoop by and talk to their kids, especially because a lot of them are all conglomerated into the same place. It's not like he has to make 20 different trips. Just one, talk to 20 of your kids, boom, you've checked a huge percentage of your kids, I guess.
That makes sense. Yeah, it could just be, yearly tours of Camp Half-Blood to meet your children.
Yeah, August is the month where I go from camp to camp if there's more than one. I don't know how this works. I don't know if there's just the one camp or if they're scattered throughout America / the world. But it feels like you could bounce around, especially if you are a god, especially Hermes. You're the fast one. Come on, man. Make the rounds.
And apparently have the most kids.
Yeah. He is the fast one. So 3 days after his arrival, Percy has his first sword fighting lesson, and he can't find a practice sword that feels just right, and Luke agrees. I don't know if this is going to come up later, but they struggle to find just the right sword for Percy. So the kids pair off, Luke pairs with Percy, and Luke just puts Percy through the ringer. He is just absolutely beat. And they take a break, people are drinking water, Luke pours ice water on his head, and Percy thinks, that sounds like a good idea. And he does so, and then instantly feels better. Yeah, because his dad's Poseidon, obviously. So then Luke says, everybody circle up. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. And Percy thinks, great, let's all watch Percy get pounded.
At least he's going into this with a good attitude.
His attitude is so funny of just accepting that he's the kid who has no idea what's going on and he's the lowest rung on the ladder. And rather than complain about it, he just goes, well, this is who I am now. And I just love his begrudging acceptance of his place in Camp Half-Blood. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
So Luke is showing everyone how to disarm a weapon from an opponent. And PJ is actually able to fend him off, maybe because he recently poured water all over his head.
Could be.
So Luke then ramps it up, and Percy feels the sword getting heavier and heavier in his hand. So he figures, I might as well just go for something. I'm clearly losing my strength here. And he tries the disarming technique against Luke, and it works, which is very exciting. And what's even more exciting than Percy doing this, honestly, I was more excited at Luke being a great sport about it.
Yeah, he was so nice.
Yeah, he wasn't angry. He wasn't flustered. He didn't even get upset at first and then calm down afterwards. Immediately, he says, show me that again. That was awesome. Luke is so good. I really, really like Luke. I like Annabeth. I like Luke. I like Grover. The only characters I don't like are the ones you are not supposed to like Nancy and Clarice. Luke is man, this guy's cool. I like him a lot. He's super cool.
He stole Percy some toiletries. Just a nice guy.
What a lad. So Percy is unable to replicate the move, and when someone else asks if it was beginner's luck, Luke says maybe, but I would also love to see what Percy could do with a balanced sword. So I like that Luke, even if he wants to make himself look better, he could have said, yeah, it was just beginner's luck. But Luke is so humble that he does not care, and he gives Percy the benefit of the doubt. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely had a crush on Luke as a young girl reading this.
How could you not? He seems perfect. So later, after Grover saves Percy from a potential climbing wall lava accident, felt like I needed to hear about this.
So much. They just skipped over it. Oh, this is a casual day at Camp Half-Blood.
After this, they are sitting together on the pier watching the naiads do underwater basket weaving, which is so funny because that's an idiom. That is definitely an old people phrase of, it's a joke that people make about college degrees that don't matter. They go, oh, what are you majoring in, underwater basket weaving? So to take something that is an idiom and turn it into a legitimate thing that they do, I thought that was really funny and just a really great dad joke from Uncle Rick.
I hadn't heard that idiom before. I love that.
I Googled it to make sure, but I feel like I definitely heard about underwater basket weaving, and the internet told me that it was a joke used to make fun of pointless majors in college, which can skew into bad territories where people think arts degrees are worthless, which I think is an awful trope that is so annoying and overplayed.
Agreed.
But I think turning underwater basket weaving from fictional thing to real thing is fantastic. And it also feels like a camp thing.
Yeah, a great camp thing. And it makes sense to weave your baskets there because the water will keep the weeds pliable.
Right? Especially if these are seaweed baskets that are being woven, right? Could be cool. So Percy asks how the meeting with Mr. D went, and Grover sarcastically says, oh, it was great. And Percy then asks Grover if his career is still on track, and Grover goes, oh, did Chiron tell you that I've been going for my searcher's license? And Percy says, well, not that specifically, but I kind of got the gist of what was going on. Now, apparently, Mr. D suspended the judgment, so their fates, Grover and Percy's, are still tied. If Percy does a quest and Grover comes along and they both return alive, the job could be considered complete. Well, my thought is, yeah, let's go on a quest. Let's go right now. Come on. I like Grover a lot. I want him to be okay. Mm-hmm. Percy confirms that he would love to go on a quest. He would love to bring Grover with him, and he would love to make sure that Grover's okay. We love it. A selfless, even though kind of selfish, king in Percy wants the best for his friends.
Yeah, it's just a nice little friendship happening there. I love it.
So good, so pure. So they talk about the cabins. Grover reveals that number 8 is Artemis. I was right. Hooray!
Yeah, because she doesn't have kids, because she is a maiden.
Yes, he clarifies she vowed to be a maiden forever, so it is just symbolic. And this holds true to what I know about Artemis, who mostly just kind of poo-poos all the gods for having babies upon babies upon babies. So shout out to Artemis. I hope we get to meet her. She seems like a cool person. Percy asks if cabins 1 through 3 are the big 3, and Grover says 2 is also honorary for Hera. Quote, she's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. Again, some Zeus shade. I hope we get to confront Zeus, because I at least appreciate that it seems like we're not doing Zeus any favors here. We're not trying to act like he's this cool dude, like he is portrayed in Hercules, the movie, where he's just a fun, loving dad. But I appreciate the scathing Zeus stuff. I hope it goes to a further step where we get to meet Zeus and he actually is a terrible person, but I have no idea what happens in these books, so I don't know.
Not giving anything away.
Thank you. I recognize for all of the guests, especially those here for these very early episodes, you just have to go, a lot. Nod and say,
Yeah, I was taking notes in my Kindle app while I was reading, and I know what's coming, so I knew what was foreshadowing, and I just have so many notes going, foreshadowing, foreshadowing, foreshadowing!
Oh, man. I feel like there should almost be, it would be too much work, but to give all of my guests a safe space to have companion episodes where they just say, okay, I couldn't tell them like this, but like all the things that you wish you could have brought to the table. Mm-hmm. So Grover reveals that the big 3 are actually Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, which in the story of the gods makes sense because they're all brothers, right? Mm-hmm. So that makes sense, but I am very intrigued with the prospect of kids of Hades being at the camp. I don't know if that is one of the 12 cabins. I feel like it wouldn't be, because I feel like Percy would have said, oh yeah, and then one of the cabins was on fire or something.
Just bones and skulls everywhere.
Right.
He doesn't have a cabin, and the jury's kind of out on whether or not he's officially an Olympian. Like, he is one of the big three.
Right.
He's Zeus and Poseidon's brother, but sometimes in some myths he has a seat on Olympus, and in others he doesn't.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I have heard that the 12 Olympians is not necessarily a set roster of 12.
Yeah.
So I guess Hades is in and out of that. But yeah, I definitely felt like if there was a Hades cabin, it would have looked very on brand. And Percy would have certainly called it out like, oh, cabin 11 was a hot topic. Percy then does confirm this. He says that Hades doesn't have a cabin here, and Grover agrees. And he says, yeah, Hades also doesn't have a seat on Olympus. So there we go. And he just kind of does his own thing in the underworld.
Doing his own thing.
Doing his own fire skull thing with souls and stuff. So Percy asks the very spot-on question, if Zeus and Poseidon had, quote, like a bazillion kids in the myths, why are their cabins empty? And then Grover gets into this big explanation, which I will just read verbatim. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big three agreed that they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them, no more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx, and then thunder booms. So dramatic. Also, clearly this has been broken because obviously Percy's dad is Poseidon, so that got broken. And I think this is interesting. This feels very Marvel, Wonder Woman, Wolverine-y, where supernatural beings find their way into actual battles that took place in society. Yeah. And I've never known how to feel about that. And I don't know how to feel about it here. Are we supposed to think, oh, the Axis powers were only evil because of Hades? I don't know. It feels strange to put that into the mix.
Yeah, that is weird. And they talk earlier about how, like, the West, this great Western civilization, moves around with the gods. Did not like that.
Yeah.
But I love this from a world building perspective, because if there are actually demigods out in the world, of course they would be influential figures, and they would come up in wars and in TV, and they would be known in the media. So that just makes sense to me.
Yeah. It will be fun if at some point they just reference someone, maybe someone impossibly strong. They just say, oh yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger, yeah, his dad was Ares. Like some sort of very well-known pop culture reference of, oh yeah.
They mentioned Houdini.
Yes. Okay, that was something, we're going to get to that, because they mentioned Houdini, and I was like, is that a Greek thing, or are they talking about Houdini? But we'll get to that very soon. But yeah, it would just be very funny if they're, someone very fast. Oh yeah, Usain Bolt, his dad was Hermes, obviously.
I mean, why not?
Percy asks if they kept to their word, and Grover's face sinks, and he tells Percy about Talia, a daughter born 17 years ago from a TV starlet with a fluffy 80s hairdo. I needed to know exactly who this TV starlet with a fluffy 80s hairdo was. Are we talking about Vanna White? Are we talking about someone from back in the day? I need timestamps and everything to figure out exactly what famous 80s actor a Greek god hooked up with.
Broke an oath on the river Styx to hook up with.
Right. Gotta be a really, really well-respected, very beautiful 80s-based actress. So Grover doesn't explain exactly what happened to Thalia, but mentions that it was a terrible fate. So again, certainly a thing that's going to come up later, but Grover does kind of explain it in a little bit, so maybe that checks that box. Is Talia a lore story thing, or is this made up just for the Lightning Thief?
That is not something that I've heard of in myths. That's just for the Lightning Thief. But you will come across more of this story later in the books.
Ooh, interesting. So Percy says, but it wasn't her fault, though. And Grover explains that the big three kids have greater powers, and they have a stronger aura that attracts more monsters. When Hades heard about the oath breaking, he let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Thalia. Her satyr protector wasn't able to keep her safe. He tried to escort her to the camp with some of her half-blood friends. They got all the way to the top of the hill with all three kindly ones and a horde of hellhounds chasing them. That feels like the full roster of people that Hades is going to sick on someone. They were going to get absolutely wrecked, But then Talia told her satyr to take the other two half-bloods to safety while she fended off the monsters. She then made her final stand at the top of the hill, and as she died, Zeus took pity on her and turned her into that giant pine tree that we saw before. And now her spirit helps protect the borders, and that is why it is called Half-Blood Hill, which, very sad. I feel so bad for Talia, but also, what a selfless person.
Right? At 12 years old.
Incredible. What a hero. Also, I don't know if it's Thalia or Talia. I've kind of been saying both pronunciations to cover all my bases. Percy now feels sad and also guilty, wondering, oh man, could I have saved my mom? And I just screamed at my book, no, Percy, don't be too hard on yourself. Come on, that's unfair. How could you expect yourself to do more than squash the Minotaur? Come on, dude. Thankfully, Percy doesn't seem to be too hard on himself. Yeah. Hopefully, this isn't a recurring thing where he is convinced that he should have saved his mom. So PJ then asks Grover if heroes really went on quests to the underworld, and Grover confirms that Orpheus, Hercules, and Houdini, and I said, Houdini? Is Houdini a Greek thing, or is he talking about punch me in the chest magician Houdini?
Yeah, that's definitely Harry Houdini that he is talking about.
Wild. So canonically, in this story, Harry Houdini has gone on a quest to the underworld?
Yeah, and I think he's the only person that they name as another demigod that we would know of.
That is the coolest. I need to know who his dad would be.
Or mom.
Sorry. I need to know who his godly parent would be. Maybe Hermes because of trickster deception stuff, maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking that. Maybe Persephone? I don't know, because she disappears and comes back.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, that is super cool. I would hope that there's more of this. It's sad that this appears to be the only one, but yeah, Houdini just casually name dropped. So Percy then asks, just wondering, for no reason in particular, just completely out of the blue question, has anyone ever, I don't know, returned someone from the dead? And Grover says never, though Orpheus came close, and I have seen Hadestown, so I know what is going on with Orpheus. That, just don't look back!
It was in the rules!
Well, you have one job! There's one thing, you're supposed to, one thing. You fool! Gah! So frustrating. Orpheus came close, and Grover then says, Percy, you're not seriously thinking. Percy replies, no, and the narrator qualifies this as saying, I lied. Quote, I was just wondering, so a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod? And this means that Percy has now absorbed the knowledge of the thing that everyone is doing to him at Camp Half-Blood, most notably Chiron, of deflect and subject change.
Oh, yeah.
And he is now using it against the people here. You'll love it. Unfortunately, Grover doesn't buy it. But I like the thought from Percy. Grover continues and he says that satyrs aren't always assigned, but they go undercover to a lot of different schools. They try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. And if they find one with a strong aura, like a big 3 child, they then alert Chiron. Percy then reminds Grover, well, you found me, and Chiron mentioned that Grover thought Percy might be special. So, something's here. And then it says, Grover looked as if I had just led him into a trap. Quote, I didn't. Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, you'd never ever be allowed on a quest, and I'd never get my license. You're probably a child of Hermes, or maybe even one of the minor gods like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? PJ, absolutely not buying it. Me, absolutely not buying it.
Not one bit.
Nah, this was a very sneaky maneuver by Percy Jackson to walk Grover into saying that he's probably the kid of a big 3 god, further lending credence to my Poseidon dad theory, and masterful stuff from Percy. And I don't know if this is just a Grover trend, but Grover kind of feels like new Hagrid, where he's the, I shouldn't have said that kind of guy. And I love that energy. Grover is so fun, and he always means well, but sometimes says a little too much or gives away the bit a little. Yeah. And, I just want to hug Grover all the time.
I love Grover so much, and he really shines later in the book.
Ooh.
There's not much going on while they're at Camp Half-Blood.
Sweet. That's what I figured. My inclination, especially because I have seen what the title of Chapter 9 is, my inclination here is that they are going to go on a quest, and I feel like Grover will be a major player, especially if Percy leaves the camp and he doesn't have a lot of people to ask. Grover will become the point of reference character. So I'm not too upset with Grover not getting a lot of screen time, book time, story time, not getting a lot of page time. He's not getting a lot of that right now, but I'm resting easy knowing he's going to be a major player later in the story.
Yeah.
Before we continue into Capture the Flag, though, let's take a little bit of an ad break, which we are calling the Lightning Brief. Hello and welcome to the Lightning Brief. I hope you're having a good time. I'm having a good time. Today's a very important day for me because if you are listening to this on the day it was released, October 11th, 2021, it is the debut of a podcast that I've been working on with a whole team of wonderful human beings for months called Modern Muckraker. Modern Muckraker is an investigative journalism podcast where I play a character who is fully convinced that he is completing the world's most important research, but in actuality, the questions that I'm covering and answering with the help of my team are very silly. The first episode is live now. It tackles the question, when should Spider-Man take the subway instead of web swinging? You can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. You can go to our website, modernmuck.com, to learn more. There are going to be 4 episodes in this season, and I'm really excited about it. I've had this idea for a very long time. We did the Kickstarter. A bunch of wonderful human beings, many of you listening right now, supported it and made it a reality, and now it's here, and I'm very proud of it, and I think you're going to like it. I'm very biased, but I think it's a very, very good podcast. And this podcast was also produced by Multitude. Multitude is the independent audio collective that the newest Olympian is under. There are a bunch of fun shows such as Exolore, which is a podcast hosted by the guest of this episode, Dr. Moiya McTier. She will tell you more about her podcast at the end of this episode, but it's a good show and you should check it out. Also, I'm going to continue our thanking of all of the patrons supporting the show. If you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can support the show and you'll get access to a bunch of bonus features for doing so. Recently, I put up the first bonus episode where I talked about all of the behind-the-scenes stuff that led to the creation of the newest Olympian. I also put up a director's commentary. We had a monthly live stream that you can watch the replay of. There's a bunch of fun goodies all available at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And I'm continuing to make my way through the backlog of shoutouts. First, I want to give a shout out to Scott Sheldon, our newest Super God patron. I want to shout out Stephanie Dorowski, Andrea Jordan, and Erder Einesdotter, our newest Mega God patrons. And a huge shout out to our newest Ultra God patron, Alpacas Are Hope. And now to thank the next set of God tier patrons: Kyler Nicholas Williams, Greg, Rachel, Riley, Sophie Hovd, Rachel Bernatowicz, One Little Spark, Stephanie Squiabro, Molly Tittle, Aaron Lewis, Maddie Bertram LeFou, Madison, Clarissa Pompa, Cassidy A. Rappley, Grace Rogers, Katie Bell's non-magical husband, Cynthia Robles, Lindsay, Collie Craig, Megan Check, Allison Lewis, Sabra, Vanessa Ultimo, Kylie Rodriguez, Emily Nold, Corina Favarola, Sophie Powelson, Per Henrik Stolte, Jamie Wiggert, Rebecca Gabriel, Emily Pham, Ethan Kenny, Maria Vittoria de Nascimento Barbosa, Regina Batista, Carly Ray, Carolyn Cochran, Betsy Lang, Talia Hodgkinson, Belle Kurtz, Addie Abergel, Katie Gadzella, Alexandra Geiger, Tyler and Danielle, Kaylee Albers, Mare, Elizabeth H., Tia Camille, Kelsey Wubin, Millie Espeseth, Katie Eichhorn, and Sydney Fox. And finally, name corrections for Jacob David Lang, Jesse Fang, and Mary Baumgartner. And before we go, just some quick words from some other sponsors making it feasible for me to do this as a full-time job. These are locally inserted, so if you live in Australia, don't be surprised if the ad is read by someone with an Australian accent. And after these ads, we will get right back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. We are back! Capture the flag time! Which is very exciting. We are here to capture flags. So Annabeth comes in with a giant banner, and Clarice enters with another giant banner. Percy asks Luke if Ares and Athena are always the leaders of the teams, and he says not always, but often. Percy asks what happens if you capture the flag. Do you repaint it? And Luke smirks and says, you'll see, which you will see at the end of chapter 8. I like that Luke is also on the suspense train. It's great. Everyone is so suspenseful. Everyone really knows how to set the stage.
I think their lives are just full of suspense, so they've internalized it and they know how to use it for storytelling purposes.
Their lives are so dramatic that they know how to shape it into a captivating story, even when it's just conversation with a friend. So Percy asks what side they are on, and Luke shoots a sly look and says that they have a temporary alliance with Athena, which is such a Hermes way of saying it. For the time being, we like Athena, but don't get too attached. They are going to get the flag from Ares, and Percy is going to help. The teams are then announced. Athena has an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the 2 largest cabins. In exchange for this alliance, privileges were traded. Better shower times, better chore schedule, the best slots for activities. I like that there has to be a bit of a bartering system to get the alliances. It makes it really fun. It also feels very campy, where I feel like stakes are usually, if you lose this game, you have to use the outdoor shower or whatever. And I like that this is the kind of flip of, hey, if you want our help, you have to do our laundry or whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely classic camp trope.
Ares has the support of everyone else. Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. Feels like the deck is stacked in Ares' favor, but we will see. The explanation behind these people is that Dionysus kids are athletic, but there's only 2 of them. Demeter kids have nature skills, but they're not particularly aggressive. But still, they're in the woods. Feels like it could help out. Aphrodite, Percy is just not concerned. I don't know if this is a trope or not to think less of Aphrodite. I know in Hades, the video game, Aphrodite, even though she is all flowery and she's just naked and her hair covers her lady parts, even though this is her presentation, her attacks and stuff, her power-ups are really strong. So I don't know if it's an overdone trope to say, Aphrodite, but Percy describes it as saying that the kids mostly just check out their reflections, do their hair, and gossip. So I don't know if this is a tired thing, but it felt a little low-hanging fruit. I don't know how you feel from a Greek mythological perspective for the book to just say, the Aphrodite kids are the vain kids.
No, I think it makes sense. Aphrodite was pretty vain in most of the myths. Like she's so vain.
I bet she thinks that this song is about her.
She leaves her husband because he's not handsome enough.
Oh no!
Has affairs. Yeah, so Aphrodite's pretty vain, but gossiping and looking good, those are different types of powers. And they are powers that aren't necessarily going to help you in a capture the flag game in the woods.
Okay, maybe they'll come into play later. We'll have to see. Now, Hephaestus's kids are big and burly, but there's only 4 of them. And then Ares has a dozen large, and then Percy says that they are ugly, mean kids. Little rude from Percy. Didn't need to throw that in, but fine. We've got it. Burly folk.
He also says that Hephaestus's kids aren't pretty.
I get that that's a very 12-year-old thing to do. I think the only thing so far I'm not liking about Percy is he does seem to be a little bit shallow. But again, at 12, yeah, but it's unnecessary. And you can still make Percy sound like a 12-year-old without him saying you're ugly, you're pretty. So that's the only thing that's been kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Other than that, no complaints about Percy so far. He's great.
Yeah, I see that. Greek mythology, there's a lot of vanity, there's a lot of emphasis on beauty, and Hephaestus is canonically the only Olympian god who isn't breathtakingly beautiful.
Okay.
He is the god that Aphrodite left because he wasn't handsome enough.
Okay, that is good to know for context that everyone is supposed to be hot, because I didn't know if everyone was supposed to be hot or if just in all the representations, whether it's paintings or shows or whatever, people just have unilaterally decided gods are super hot. So it's good to know that from the stories themselves, they are canonically hot.
Yeah.
So Chiron then sets the rules. He defines the boundaries. He says magical items are allowed. And he says that the banner must be prominent and have only 2 guards. From my experience of Capture the Flag, this is good. It was never fair when people would hide the flag underneath mulch or something, or you'd have a bunch of kids guarding it. It's not fun. Come on.
Yeah, agreed. Good rules.
Yes.
Thanks, Chiron.
Thank you, Chiron.
Or Mr. Brunner.
He's Chiron now, though. He's gone full Chiron.
Yeah.
Prisoners may be disarmed, but not bound or gagged. Bit of a yikes that we had to lay that out, but given what we see happens later with the Ares kids, I'm glad this rule is put into place. No killing or maiming. Again, also felt extreme, but given what the Ares kids do, I'm glad this rule is put into place. Chiron is the referee and also the medic. I appreciate that they've got those things in place. Overall, good rules. This is good. Well-run game.
Probably the best run thing about Camp Half-Blood.
Oh no! So Chiron presents the armaments. There's helmets, there's bronze swords, there's spears, and there are metal-coated oxhide shields. Sounds very fancy.
Very specific.
Very specific. It was like generic. Here is something incredibly niche. So Luke gives Percy a shield, and the way narrator Percy describes it is that it is, quote, the size of an NBA backboard, which as a big basketball boy, I was super excited to hear this.
That was written for you to read.
Gosh, the second basketball reference so far in the books, and man, oh man, am I a happy camper. And apparently Percy is on border patrol. Also, just describing it as the size of an NBA backboard is good context for a kid. That's quite large. So he's on border patrol. Athena is the blue team, Ares is the red team. The helmets, to distinguish of these teams, have these big plumes that stick out of them. And that's how you know what side you're on.
I'm picturing them like the Trojan helmets. That's what I picture.
Oh, yes, certainly. Percy tries to talk to Annabeth, but she is just all business. She says, avoid Clarice's spear and man the border and leave the rest to me. Percy then mumbles, okay, glad you wanted me on your team, which... Percy. I mean, I get it, though. His feelings are hurt, and he's 12. I feel bad. Again, I want to give him a little hug, just like I wanted to hug Grover. I want to hug Percy, too.
Everyone gets a hug.
Everyone gets
Clarice.
a hug. No, Clarice does not get a hug. Clarice gets a stern talking to.
Although if any of these kids need a hug, it's probably Clarice.
I would love if Ares comes and is kind to Clarice and then she becomes a nice person. That could be a very fun character arc, but I also would not be surprised if she just becomes eternal bully. Then narrator Percy says, quote, there was no way anybody would actually attack me, would they? I mean, Olympus had to have liability issues, right? Love this. His head is in the right place. This is great. Love his thought process. So then Capture the Flag begins. Percy is alone, and he hears some growling that dissipates, but then he is ambushed by Clarice and 4 others.
So fast.
So quick, not great. And I thought this growling was them, but we will learn of future growling. So he gets surrounded, and he blocks a spear jab from Clarice using a shield, but it still really hurts. And then he realizes this isn't a regular spear, but it's electric. Boogie, oogie, oogie. She's got an electric spear.
Maybe that's why they specified that it was coated in metal, because then it would conduct the electricity.
There it is. There it is. Clarice laughs and says that she is going to give him a haircut, which does feel like a classic camp move. If I do this thing, everyone will see, and you'll have to keep answering what happened to your hair, and you'll have to tell everyone I kicked your butt. Makes sense from a bully perspective. Clarice, actually, a really good bully. Very accurate to what a bully is. I think it's a well-represented bully from experience as someone who got picked on a lot.
But yeah, if you're going to be a bully, do it right.
Yeah, for sure. Percy tries to raise his sword, but Clarice hits it aside with her spear and Percy's arms just go numb. And then Clarice says, oh, wow, I'm scared of this guy. Really scared. And Percy just kind of mumbles the flag is that way. And he wanted to sound angry, but he doesn't think it came out that way. And one of her siblings goes, yeah, but see, we don't care about the flag. We care about a guy who made our cabin look stupid. And Percy... I love, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, but sometimes even when the situation doesn't call for it, when I'm playing sports, cannot help myself. It's like an out-of-body experience where I will just say something to upset my opponent. And Percy has this again here, where he says, quote, you do that without my help.
Burn!
That's good. That's a really good burn. And then narrator Percy says, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to say, but I said, who cares? That was awesome. So good. So Percy then starts to back up towards the creek, which I thought, smart, get in the water.
But he's not doing it intentionally.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't know he's being incredibly smart. Clarice gets him in the ribs. Big pain. A sibling then slashes his arm and he begins to bleed. And Percy says, hey, no maiming. And that sibling says, oops, guess I lost my dessert privilege. Now, I think that it's good that a rule was no maiming. I do not like that the repercussion of no maiming is no dessert for you. Does not feel like the punishment fits the crime.
Agreed. Yeah, you should have to give all of your dinner to the gods, or no ambrosia and nectar for you.
Or you're never allowed to play Capture the Flag again because you cannot be trusted.
That's even better. No quests.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't maim people. That's a low bar. That's a very low bar.
Yeah. Especially don't intentionally maim people.
Right. At the very least, you could say, I was just trying to hit a shield. I missed. I hit his arm. Sure. But this was super intentional. Oh, yeah. Don't like that the stakes are not very high. So then Percy gets pushed into the creek, and I channeled Vivian from the highly problematic movie Pretty Woman. Big mistake! Huge! That is the only good part of that film. And then narrator Percy says, quote, the water seemed to wake up my senses, as if I had just had a bag of my mom's double espresso jelly beans.
Which were probably blue.
Probably blue, probably not fit for a 12-year-old, but sounds tasty. I'm on board. Shout out to the time, my wife Kelly, who doesn't have the highest caffeine tolerance where a cup of coffee will be good for her all day. There was a time she ate a handful of what she thought were, she didn't realize that chocolate-covered espresso beans are still caffeinated, and she ate a big handful and was wired the rest of the day. But I like the specificity from Percy here. It's a really solid simile. Percy then hits a dude so hard with the flat of his sword that his helmet flies off and he crumples to the ground. crumple, when describing a human, that paints a very clear picture.
And it's never good.
No.
Crumpling means that you should call 911.
Exactly. Humans, unlike the fronts of cars, are not designed to crumple. So if a human crumples, that means he hit the floor pretty hard. So then Percy, holding true to Percy form, unfortunately, says, quote, ugly number 2 and ugly number 3 came at me. I just wish he called them Bozo number 2 or something else. I like just numbering the people. It's unfortunate that the vanity is the defining characteristic.
Yeah, agreed.
So he slams one in the face with his shield, and then he cuts off the other's plume and they back off. I get that this is water, making Percy incredibly strong, but water-powered Percy is a force to be reckoned with.
A fiend.
Yes. Number 4 then hesitates, and Clarice then attacks, and Percy snaps her spear with his sword and shield, kind of gets it lodged and just snaps it like a twig. Impressive.
Very impressive.
Very, very impressive. He then smacks her in the head with his sword butt, and he does say sword butt, hyphenated, technical term, not just me making a silly phrase, sword butt. And then Luke comes running through with the banner, and they won.
Woo!
Team Athena won. Love it. Percy then realizes, yay, wait a second, I was a distraction, which I think is fantastic planning from Annabeth. It's absolutely genius.
Oh, yeah.
Once Luke comes across, the banner turns from red to silver, and then the boar becomes a spear with a caduceus. Is a boar a traditional Ares thing? I had not heard of this before.
Probably.
Okay.
The Greek myths associate different gods with different animals that they would happen to take the form of, either because they were wooing a human person or they wanted to evade the ire of their godly spouse. So yeah, I could see a boar being associated with Ares.
Got it. So Annabeth then goes up to Percy and says, not bad, hero, but Percy can't see her. Then she asks where he learned to fight like that, and then she materializes out of the air, and she's holding a Yankees cap. I'm very excited. I'm an enormous Yankees fan, so that was very cool. Grew up in New Jersey, so don't call me a front runner. They're the closest team. I love that this is in the world. And my inclination here is that it's a magic hat because they said magic items were allowed. So I guess this is a Yankees hat that gives you invisibility powers. That would be very cool. I would love that because then I could go to a Yankees game and put on this hat and then sneak into a really fancy seat and then only have to pay $5 for $500 seats. Because as much as I love the Yankees, those tickets are way too expensive. Come on. Get it together.
Also, an invisibility cap is, I think, a lot more practical than an invisibility cloak.
10,000%. Because with a cloak, you would have to extend your hand beyond the cloak or have it going so far to the ground that you could potentially trip over it. Having a hat that just makes you completely invisible, way more effective. Absolutely genius.
So much more effective, yeah.
Percy now is upset that he was used as a setup because Annabeth knew Clarice would attack him. And Annabeth just replies, I told you, Athena always has a plan. I already liked Annabeth. I like that she's a little sassy too. It's great. It's super fun. And I think whether she just becomes a friend or a love interest of Percy, I think she's a good match because snark and snark goes well together.
Yeah. There's also like the fun beef between Athena and Poseidon that's just nice to overcome.
Gosh, that's going to be so fun if they have to, what is it, Capulets and Montagues, right? That's the Romeo and Juliet. If they have to do that, that would be super fun. So Annabeth points out that his sword cut is healing. And Percy then also notices this. He's confused, but Annabeth's gears are turning because she is smart. And she tells him to step out of the water. And he gets out and then immediately feels really tired. And then Annabeth says, oh, sticks, this is not good. And I have already made it known that I love replacing expletives with Greek terms. Saying oh, sticks instead of the S word here, very, very good. I love it a lot. She says, oh, sticks, this is not good. I assumed it would be Zeus. So at this point, I was doing laps around my apartment because clearly Poseidon dad, 100% confirmed. But upon reflection, I don't know if Annabeth's concern here is she worried about Poseidon because of Athena-Poseidon beef? Is she worried about Poseidon because she actually is in love with Percy and is concerned about Athena-Poseidon beef? Or is Poseidon not a good character. Is Poseidon a jerk in this universe? That would make me sad. I feel like there's a lot of different ways this could go, and I'm very intrigued to see why her initial thought is, this is not good. Because at its surface, she should be excited that someone special is here. It's a big 3 kid. This should make her happy. But what about Poseidon makes it so bad that she's worried? Is it because of the rivalry? Is she worried that Percy's not the person for her because of the feud between Athena and Poseidon? I had so many different questions, and I'm realizing you cannot answer them, so I'm sorry. Or you could, but you should not in the interest of the podcast.
Right. Yes, for the sake of the podcast, I will keep my mouth shut.
But I'm sure you and all of the listeners are sharing a silent bond of knowing which of my questions the answer to is yes and which is no, and you can all be smug in your knowledge and my ignorance. So then there's a canine growl, and it says again. So this is referencing that it's that same growl we heard pre-Ares group ambush. Chiron yells something in ancient Greek, but Percy understands it. He says, "Stand ready, my bow." And at this point I said, not dinner. This is something else. So just above them on a bunch of rocks is a black hound the size of a rhino with lava red eyes and dagger-like fangs. So I thought, okay, feels like Hades' hellhound that we heard about before. Annabeth says run, which I thought, you don't have to be a child of Athena to think that's a good plan, but yep, smart thinking. She tries to protect Percy, but the hellhound just jumps over her. Love that she put herself in between the hound and Percy. Huge respect for her. Already liked her a lot. Now I like her even more. This is fantastic.
Yeah, especially after voicing that, she has some issues with Percy now.
Yeah, it's great. Just springing to action, trying to defend it, not worrying about other things. Love it. Selfless. Great. But this giant dog just jumps over her, claws Percy, and then Percy hears 40 noises, and it's just 40 arrows just going boom, 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 like all getting lodged into the hound, which super cool. But part of my cynical brain is, what if one guy missed? What if one archer was a little off, or the arrows clinked in midair and deflected? That could be bad.
Or went through the hound into Percy?
Right. I guess they are so good that this is not a concern, but my brain went, it feels like a big risk when Percy is right there. I guess a rhino's really big, so maybe they're confident, but still felt like a touchy decision. But hey, it worked, so can't argue with the results.
All's well that ends with Percy alive.
Agreed. Percy knows that he is badly cut, and he would have been turned into, quote, 100 pounds of delicatessen meat. And this feels very proper. Again, I think this is a trend. I don't think this is a New York thing. I don't know of anyone who calls it delicatessen meat and not deli meat. But at least in New York, you're going to call a place a deli. You're not going to call it a delicatessen. So again, there was a time when Rick was writing Percy to tell the cab driver where to go, and instead of saying 104th and 1st, he said East 104th Street and 1st Avenue, which is overly formal. And again, to say 100 pounds of delicatessen meat, okay, he would just say deli meat.
Yeah.
Or even he would pick a very specific New York meat, like 100 pounds of capicola or something that you would get at a deli in New York. Delicatessen meat was a bit of, that's a weird turn of phrase.
It can't all be winners.
No, but it's okay, Uncle Rick. We forgive you. Come on the pod. Annabeth reveals that this is, in fact, a hellhound from the Field of Punishment. Is that a Hades thing, or is that just a word for the underworld? Is it a specific thing?
Yeah, it's a specific place. The underworld has different parts. There are the Elysian Fields that you go to if you've been a very good person, kind of like heaven. There's Tartarus, the depths of Hades, or the underworld where all the bad things go. And then there are little other places in between.
Cool.
The Fields of Punishment would be one of those.
Yes. I know one of them because of the video game. Is the River Phlegathon one of the in-between ones?
It's definitely a place
nice.
In the underworld.
That's the second level in Hades. You go Tartarus to Asphodel to Elysium to the Temple of Styx to Above and Beyond.
Is Above and Beyond like you're out of the underworld?
Yes, you're out of the underworld and you are at Earth.
Okay.
So those are the surface. Those are the levels. So yeah, I know this kind of stuff. Look at me. And if people at home are going to get annoyed with like, oh my gosh, he keeps talking about the video game. Look, that's all I know, man. I
gotta talk. To play this game now.
It's such a good game. At the very least, you could just like watch either YouTube videos of people doing a Let's Play or just the cutscenes and stuff. But it's a very good game. Highly recommend. They're not paying me to say this, but it's good. And then also Spirits did a very good episode about the lore behind it. So
yeah, they did. I listened to that one.
Right. If you don't care about spoilers and you want to hear just kind of the story stuff, they talk about it. So that's some good stuff too. But yeah, it's a really good game. And even if you are a person who likes stories in games and you're not good, or you just for whatever reason aren't good at this particular game, or you just want to get through it quicker, you can have a setting called God Mode, which makes you even stronger. And every time you lose, it's a roguelike game, which means you keep doing the same thing and you progress farther and farther. So maybe the first couple times you don't get out of the first level, then you get to the second. Every time you die, you get even stronger. So if you really just want to get through the story and you don't care about being on that mode, they have that, which I think is good. And I think games are doing a better job of doing it, where more games have I just want to appreciate the story of this game. Can you just make this simple for me, please? And I like that that's a thing. And I don't think anyone should ever feel embarrassed about it. People play stuff for different reason. And some people play on expert mode and other people just want to see the story. And I think it's worthy of that, since so many video games now have such good stories that they're like interactive movies now.
I agree. I'm one of the people who just likes it for the story. I'm terrible at playing video games. I never played them growing up, so my thumbs just don't know how to video game. But I love watching my fiance play and experiencing the story through that.
Ooh, Hades is a very good, even though it's a one-player game, it is a good watch someone else play it game, because it's very fun and the story's fun. And especially if you already like Greek mythology, all the characters are great. Poseidon is your drunk uncle. Zeus is a huge jerk. It's some good stuff. Athena is very much, I'm a strong, independent woman that don't need no god. There's some good stuff. So yes, Annabeth reveals that this is a hellhound from the field of punishment, but she is confused because they can't enter the camp. But Chiron says someone from within the camp summoned it. My initial thought here was, quick, are any of the counselors wearing turbans? Or are they named Professor Quirrell? Troll in the dungeon, we've been here before. But I hope that this is not Clarice being angry that she was bested and then summoning a hellhound. That feels like a not great situation, but we'll have to see what causes this. We don't learn. Clarice tries to blame Percy, which... Okay, Clarice. Yeah, Percy really had this harebrained scheme of summoning a hellhound and then have it absolutely rip him to shreds. Yeah, super cool plan.
Super cool plan. But then Chiron just shuts it down.
Yes.
Be quiet, child.
Absolutely powerful. Be quiet, child. So good. The hellhound then melts into a shadow, and Annabeth says, go into the creek. And Percy does, and then he starts to heal. And now everyone is looking at Percy, but Percy would think that they would be looking at his healing cuts, but they're not. They're looking above his head, because what's above his head? It's a sign, a green light, a trident! It's confirmed! Beer, 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 beer. I wasn't wrong! Poseidon Dad! Let's go!
You don't have to redesign the show logo.
I don't. That was really nice, especially when they said green. I was very excited because, as we've talked about, it's a bluish, greenish logo. So even color-wise, it's working out here. This is great. I was very excited to know I didn't have to change the branding because I had read far enough to get a lot of Poseidon hints, but not all the way where I got to, yes, his dad is Poseidon chapter. Though it would have been really funny if I did a lot of Trident branding and everyone was just very good at not laughing at me when it turns out, yeah, his dad's Zeus. It should have been a lightning bolt. You dweeb.
That would have been great.
But yes, it has worked out. Super cool. Trident. Love it. Annabeth says, quote, your father... This is really not good. Again, I'm very concerned, and now I'm very worried that Poseidon kind of sucks in this rendition. Chiron says, it is determined, and then everyone kneels, which is quite profound. And then Percy asks, my father? And Chiron replies, Poseidon, Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses? Hail Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god. Super cool. Hold on. Father of horses?
Yeah.
How did he get horses?
So like seahorses come out.
Okay.
I'm not totally sure how the association got made, but there are lots of myths, including the myth that explains the beef between Athena and Poseidon that involve horses. Horses and Cyclops are Poseidon's gang.
That is so interesting. I was very excited, but then Father of Horses, that's really cool. I hope that comes up in some way. That'd be really great if Percy is also proficient at animal handling and can ride horses really well.
That would be cool, wouldn't it?
Right? Maybe Percy will have to, this is not 100% fair. I have seen, because I have the box set, I feel like I've seen Percy riding a Pegasus before, and a Pegasus is a horse. So maybe he's good at flying on Pegasi because father of horses dad, but that's pretty cool. Does this make Percy son of horses? Because that's cool.
I think it makes Percy the brother of horses.
Oh, okay. We have to family tree out titles now. What are Percy's nicknames? Does he just get slightly less intense nicknames for everything? Instead of Earth Shaker, he's Country Shaker. Instead of Stormbringer, he's Drizzlebringer. He's the son of horses. Hail Percy Jackson, son of the sea god. But yeah, that's the end of chapter 8. A powerful chapter where we learn a lot and we get a very cool action chapter. I'm excited. This is the first kind of really action heavy thing. We got little glimpses of it with the stuff in the Met with the fight with the kindly one, but this is the first truly well fleshed out, multiple page long action chapter. And it's so refreshing and exciting to know that Rick Riordan is great at writing narration. He's great at making Percy sound like a 12-year-old. He's great at making a captivating story that you want to continue to follow. And also, he's good at writing action chapters. So,
which isn't a given. There are a lot of authors who cannot write action well, but it's really nice to see it in this book. Like, I could picture Percy snapping Clarice's spear. It was really nice.
Yes, you really feel like you're in the action. It's great. It's well done. And it gives me so much hope about the chapters to come and the series to come and even the spin-off books to come. But Dr. Moiya, thank you so much for joining, lending your expertise, being a fun guest and informative one, and saying as much as you can without spoiling me. I appreciate all that stuff. If people want to find you doing stuff anywhere else, where can they do so? I am Moiya McTier. I'm extremely Googleable. You can find my website, moiyamctier.com, or Twitter is GoAstroMo. And I host the podcast Exolore. It's ExolorePod on Twitter and Instagram. And it's all about fictional world building. So we build fictional worlds from scratch. Like, what would life be like on a planet that didn't have a sun? And we analyze fictional worlds, like the world of The Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, how is that inspired by myths? Yeah, you can find that Exolore wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, EXOLORE. Google it, listen, hear more of Moiya. So thank you again for joining, Dr. Moiya. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun. This was a blast. I'm having so much fun doing this podcast. It's a good time. I just get to hang out with my nerd friends and talk about a book. I'm loving it. It's some good stuff. So thank you again, everyone. And until next time, I'll be Percying ya. You do a different one of that every time. I think I have. I don't know how many I can do. At its core, Percy ya later is what we're doing with the final tag here. It's really strong. I didn't have a dad pun in the title, so I'm making up for it by making our stinger a dad pun. But yeah, Percy ya later, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast was created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the website and the social media. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and our art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to learn more about the show, such as what chapters we are covering in the future, you can go to our website, thenewestolympian.com. And if you want to support the show and get bonus content for doing so, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. That Patreon also gets you access to the patron-exclusive Discord, and if you are looking for other communities on different social medias, you can find us at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we also have a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewesTolympian. Of course, want to give a huge shout out to our producer level patrons: Lauda Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Natanya Page, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Griffin Dork, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Mooney B, Boney Pony, Harlan Christ, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Wilkie, Martin Anvik, Abby Ryan, Josh Clements, Angela MF, Mary Baumgartner, Shannon Yvanez Aguilar, Wise Girl, and Alpacas Are Hope. If you are enjoying the show and you think of someone else that might enjoy it, why don't you tell them about it? You can do that on social media. You can do that directly. You can just leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts, and then maybe someone will say, oh, maybe I'll check this out. What a glowing review. All of those things really help, and if you do any of them, I would be forever grateful. And I'm just grateful that you listened to this episode of the podcast, and I hope you tune in next week for episode 7, where we cover chapter 9 of The Lightning Thief. But until then, I'll Percy you later.